Hey, how you going? It's Shane here from Valiant Performance. Got some bad news. This is James's VJ. James was starting to think that this car was cursed because he said to us, just make it reliable. Every time I drive it to a car show or something, it comes back on a trailer. Well, guess what? It came back on a trailer this time. We went to Peninsula Link, drove down there. There was only about 4 or 5 cars there. So as we drove out, we cruised down the road, we went and stopped, got fuel, had the car idling for a bit. We're just going through the processes of just checking everything, making sure everything's right. Took off from the BP on the opposite side where Penlink is. Started to head back, was going to turn off at Dandenong Frankston Road. As we turned off, the engine made a bang noise. It's not a noise you want to hear. And it stalled the engine, and that's even worse. And immediately I thought, well, it sounds, because I've had this sound before, it sounded like an adjuster had unwound. But normally when
an adjuster on his rockers.
Yeah, sorry.
So this has got
roller rockers. They've all been set, but unfortunately, if you go back here at this one's moving a lot. The reason why is the adjuster has broken off, and unfortunately, it's not in the head area.
So we're going to have to start digging to find it.
We're hoping it's just fallen down into the valley in the back.
The little hole, I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, down there.
There, we're hoping it's just fallen down in there.
Yep. Otherwise, if it's gone further, we're pulling the engine out, which is what I didn't want to have to do. But when I was putting the engine together, I noticed the pushrods were a little bit short and the adjusters were out a fairly long distance.
We'd taken the heads off because it blown a head gasket. Had
yes.
Valpro heads. That was the last video that we did. Shane will get one of these heads, won't you?
These gaskets, right. So
had Valpro head gaskets.
I had Valpro head gaskets, and that's what happened. So what we did is we removed the heads, removed the old gaskets, and you could see that the gaskets have been blown for a long time because the blue area in the gasket had gone black and the block had gone black. So it had blown the head gasket right across the board. That one was just an exceptionally bad section of the head gasket that had blown. So while we had the heads off, I always like to get things checked. So I sent them to my head guy. He checked them out, said give them a pressure test, said they were A-OK. So we commenced in putting the engine back together with Cometic head gaskets, putting new extractor gaskets, and so because the extractor gaskets were leaking as well. Which
was creating havoc with our O2 sensor for the sniper and causing the air fuel to be all over the place.
Yeah, so we changed that, got that all back together, and we were test driving it. So basically we were just doing a random test drive, thought everything was going to be fine.
Had the laptop in, was running a log on the sniper, see what was happening.
And she broke down it was a very hot day yesterday.
I'd like to give a shout out to all the people who saw us sitting on the side of the road waiting for the tow truck, offering us drinks or free tows. Thank you so much, guys. Really made my day to see that there's still some really good people out there.
Yeah, there is. They were actually fantastic. Everyone asked what was wrong, and in the back of my head, because of how the adjuster, how it's just started to miss instantly and pop. Right, it makes a popping sound when you break an adjuster. I assumed that we'd broken an adjuster, so I told everyone that we'd broken a rocker arm or an adjuster. I know that noise from experience. I have had rocker arms break before, and as soon as they break, the valves can't open. So as soon as the valves can't open, it pops in the intake, or it pops in the exhaust, whichever breaks. And in this case, it broke on the exhaust valve. So when it breaks on the exhaust valve, it'll pop in the intake. So, and that's what it was doing. So what it does is it fires the cylinder's exhaust gases, but at the same time it can't exhaust them out. So it pulls the stroke right up, and then it tries to pump it out the intake manifold. Hence the reason why it won't run. So it's a fail-safe in a way because it limits the damage that can be caused. Yes, I could have pulled a spark plug out and driven it home, but I didn't want to risk that, not with a client's car. As soon as something goes wrong, we stop. I didn't have any tools with me because I actually didn't think I was going to need any tools. But unfortunately, I needed tools and I didn't have any. So it was a tow truck drive back to the shop, and here we are now, Sunday, pulling it apart, and really upset because now I was hoping this car was going to be done and out the door and
ready for him to drive around.
And now I've got to pull it apart, and hopefully the piece is in the valley down in here, but unfortunately there's a big open area in the back there. If it's fallen into the sump, I've got to pull the engine out.
So we will just have to wait and see. However, I think we will be getting slightly longer push rods this time.
Well, I'm definitely going to change the push rods, because the only reason why you'll break an adjuster normally is it's broken flush with the bottom of the rocker arm. I'll make another video when I get it out. But the only reason why you'll break an adjuster at the base of the rocker is if it's flexing too much. So to put it simply, when you've got an adjuster sticking out and you've got the cup of the push rod sitting in there and the rocker's moving like this, it's doing this like wildly. So even though we were just cruising when it happened, obviously if one's going to break, they're all going to break. So I hate to say it, all these adjusters, the roller rockers are still good, but all the adjusters are going in the bin.
Adjusters and new push rods.
Yeah, because if one's broken,
the rest of them are fatigued.
Yeah,
that's
it's too much of a risk. The owner just wants this fixed, and I understand he's getting frustrated with it because it just seems to be everything that's been done on the engine is not exactly quite right.
It's nearly there.
Like, they've done great things. They've got head stud kit. I haven't pulled the bottom end apart, so I don't know about the bottom end. It's a stroker. The engine is quite powerful.
It's got a pretty beefy cam in it.
Yeah. We've got the rev limit set fairly low. We've got it set at 6,000 RPM, but at the end of the day, he wants longevity out of it. So if we've got the rev limit set at a nice safe level, it'll last a long time. So that break in the rocker arm, in that rocker adjuster, is a fatigue issue. So it just can't handle the forces that it's put under. Being that it's a solid cam as well, solid cam puts extra harmonics through everything. So ideally myself, if it was a street car, I'd have a hydraulic cam in it. I'd actually have a hydraulic roller in it. To me, that's more of a streetable camshaft, and you'd be able to drive for thousands of miles like we do in the Chrysler by Chrysler. We drive thousands of miles in that.
Drive that thing around the clock.
Yeah, we've driven it to Queensland and back twice. We've driven Adelaide multiple times. We've driven lots of distances. We've driven, some days we've driven 1,000 kilometres in a day. And the engine's been faultless. But apart from the time we broke a crank, but that's another story. Older video, you'll have to watch that one. But like Hughes roller rockers, they look like good roller rockers.
It's just we got caught this time and needed to have it towed back.
Yeah, normally I'm able to fix things.
But some things it's just safer to err on the side of caution, stop it, get it towed back, and then have a look. But that's okay. Sunday, it's a typical Melbourne day. It's stinking hot. It's rained, so now it's stinking hot and humid. So where else is it better to be than inside a big concrete bunker? And
I was planning on going to Rob Bellio's car show, but that's not going to happen now. So anyway, what we'll do is we'll pull the rockers off, and I'll show you.
And we'll continue this video on a little bit later.
Yeah.
You remember that game of Operation? You're not allowed to touch the sides? Where'd you drop it? Did you just drop it? Did you just drop it?
It's right on the edge of the hole. Got it.
Did it pick it up?
Yeah, I got it.
Look at that. There it is. Oh my God. Let's have a look.
So just let me turn the light stick.
So what have we got here?
So that is the end of it. See the dark bit and the shiny bit? That's how it's broken off. See how much is hanging out? Oh yeah, look at that. It's come up. When it's broken off, it's come up and the push rod's gone bang. That's why the push rod's bent. Here's the push rod. That's what's happened to the push rod. So
it's a banana.
That is a bin job. So that's a chrome moly push rod. What's happened is when it's gone to break off, it's gone whack and it's hit it right like that. So it's hit it like that into the rocker. Yeah, see there's the mark. And that's where it sort of hit. So it sort of hit like that, bang, and this has gone like that and gone bang.
Do that again.
It's gone whack like that, bang, and then it's fallen into the engine. But,
the engine has stopped, and this is why it's important to stop your engine when you hear a funny noise.
Now,
instead of keeping it running.
How far these stick out? I don't like them sticking out that far.
No.
So normally...
So that how many threads do you reckon is holding that in?
Oh, there's plenty of thread because the thread goes right through. The thing is it's too much hanging out. And the thing is it's hardened, and during the flexing, because as I said, as I explained, as the rocker's going up and down, this is flexing like this. Like that, as it goes up and down, right? And that flexing, constant flexing, puts stress, well, it puts stress on the push rod, as well as that. It's actually bent the push rod next to it, but I think it's bent the push rod next to it. It's because the exhaust valves, the intake valves tried to open with a cylinder full of fire.
Yep.
And the valves tried to push open. It's been too much pressure in the cylinder, bent a push rod, which is not a bad thing. You'd rather bend a push rod than break a valve. So, but yeah, that's what's happened. Now, the roller rockers I use, these have a very, very small...
Sorry, I've got to try and focus on that, yeah.
These have a very, very, very small thread width, so they're only 3/8. The push rod adjusters that I use in my roller rockers are 7/16 UNF. 7/16, anyone that knows Imperial knows that 7/16 is way bigger than 3/8, and being 7/16, it's stronger. So I'm going to suggest to the owner that we pull these roller rockers, throw them in the bin, and because I do not trust any of these adjusters now. So when you're doing rocker geometry, sometimes you make a mistake. Don't make the customer pay for it. This is what happens, right? If you make a mistake with your push rod length, just buy another set of push rods. If these were 200th thou longer, this wouldn't have happened.
So this is why we have just about enough push rod lengths for every single motor,
well,
just in case.
Look, I've made mistakes.
Eventually, if you build enough motors, you end up having a set that's right.
Yeah, look,
for somebody else.
I've made mistakes with my push rod lengths, So what I've done is I've made a mistake. I haven't used them. I'll return them and get the right set. Not go, she'll be right. She'll be right doesn't work here. This is what happens with she'll be right.
Or sometimes Shane goes, I'm too lazy to return them. I'll sit them here and eventually I'll find a use for them.
That's right. So push rods, it's just, this was an unnecessary incident that should never have happened. This should not have happened.
However, it is better that this happened while you were driving
than the customer. As he said, every time he drives the car comes back on a trailer.
Yeah.
So he can't go to a car show successfully and drive it back. So it's just not fair. Let's just get this sorted out.
Battle of wills now. So I'm more stubborn than the car is. We'll get it right.
Yeah, well, look, again, so the problem is everything on the car is new. Everything is good quality. It's got good quality heads, good quality intake manifold. It's just that some of the things I looked at and I went, I wouldn't have done it that way. That is one of the things that I wouldn't have done, because that's what happens.
And kiddies, this is why maths is important, so that you can figure out the correct push rod length for your hot rod motor.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll end up on the side of the road going, well, this is not so bad. It just broke and it fell to where I could get to it.
Yes.
It's when they fall into the valley and right at the back of the engine, there's a big hole in the back of the engine. They just go straight down. They can be collected by the crankshaft. They can be collected by a rod. If they're collected by a rod and the scissor action as the rod comes in and around each other like this, gets caught, jam the rod, then you've got a whole engine rebuild. This we've avoided.
And considering it was one of the adjusters at the back of the motor where that hole is, we were lucky.
Yeah. So I'm not going to just say that was it. So I'm going to run a magnet down there. I'm going to pull the lifters out underneath the intake manifold without taking the intake manifold off and flip them over with a magnet and inspect the backside of the lifter just to make sure it didn't have a little rub mark on it just in that incident, because again, the last thing I want to do is put it all back together, give it to the customer, and then 3 months down the track and do a cam load, because that can happen. This push rod here, I don't know if you can see it, look at this one. This one's gone for a ride.
Oh, well that's, yes, that one's for pushing around corners.
Yeah, now this happened just off idle. It was about at 2,000 RPM when this happened.
So that's, and these are what, chrome moly? So
yeah, chrome
the
moly.
amount of force required from the motor to make that look like an S.
Back in the old days, we'd get a hammer, straighten that, put it back in. We don't do that anymore.
That now goes in the steel bin.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, update later.
Yes. As you can see, actually, have a look at this. If you can see, look at all the rocker adjustments. See, they're all the same.
Yeah.
See, they're all the same length, all the same, all the way through. So it wasn't an issue
of wrong adjustment.
Just to clarify that.
So I mean, I watched you do it anyway. So
yeah. I always like to triple check everything. It's better to triple check, but the customer spent a bit of money with me fixing a lot of mistakes in it, and the last thing I wanted to do is tell him that I found extra ones. I just was happy to, because I thought, well, that's not how I do it. We've only got the rev limit at 6,000 RPM. It should be okay. I was wrong. It
isn't.
It wasn't okay. This is, so it bent two push rods. So
all right.
Yeah.
We'll give you an update in a minute.
Yep. We've changed the roller rockers out with another set. There's a few differences in the roller rockers. As you can see here in the base, see where the adjuster sits, it's a lot stronger, but also the adjuster's a different style. See, this is the non-damaged one. See how this has a cup on it, and this is a ball. Now, one of the mistakes that they made with this setup, and the reason why it broke.
Well, the reason you don't use this setup.
Well, the reason why I don't like this setup is because, well, this setup is okay as long as you don't have heaps of thread hanging out like that. What happens is you got the push rod like that, and as the rocker's moving, it's constantly putting force on here as the rockers.
And the push rod's going up and down. And does that cup chew out the inside of the push rod if
no,
it's badly
it doesn't chew
adjusted?
out, but it does put force, sideways force on that thread, and then what happens is that, and as you can see, it's just snapped straight off, and that's hardened material. Now with this setup, when you have the push rod sitting in the end, this is an adjustable push rod, just if anyone is curious. So when that goes up and down, see how that doesn't move as much? The fulcrum's a lot shallower.
It's not the push rod that the movement is then set on. It's the movement
rocker
is on the rocker.
Yeah, yeah. Now also too, the difference between these rockers, like this engine's got a solid cam in it, and the spring pressures were quite high. Now when you've got high spring pressures, you can't run a bushed style roller rocker. So what this does is this relies on rubbing on that inside surface, and as you can see, it's quite rough. Now when you had the spark plugs out of this engine, you couldn't turn the engine over by hand unless you had a big huge breaker bar on it, and it was really hard to turn over. Now that we've got these roller rockers on it, the Torrington bearings, see the Torringtons in there?
If I can get a nice zoom, yep.
So these run a smaller shaft. So these run a smaller shaft, and then they have a spacer so you can bolt them onto your pedestal. So they're still shaft mount, but they're a smaller shaft. Now you'd think, oh yeah, smaller shaft, it's weaker. No, it doesn't work like that. The shaft is fine. We've done with these rockers, we've done 150,000 kilometres in Hermes Chrysler by Chrysler, and it's been fine. But these ones, they just weren't suited for this application.
So once you've changed from this kind of bearing,
yeah, to this one,
to the roller bearing,
but you can
there's
see
a lot less. It moves a lot smoother, which makes everything easier to turn over, and there's less load on everything else.
But you can see, just looking at it too, it's thicker through here, so it's got more support through here. It's more support on the thread in the back. There's rules to follow when it comes to materials and how far the thread needs to poke through the materials. Right? Now, when it comes to cast iron, you need to have the thread into the cast iron by the thread width by 1.5. So the thread width, which is that, by 1.5. So when you've got steel, say this rocker was steel, you could have thread width by thread width. So thread width by thread width.
So 1 to 1.
1 to 1, yeah. Now, being aluminium, technically it should be double the material thickness. So you got, instead of say by 1.5, you got times by 2. Now, physically looking at that thread there, that's times by 1. Even though it's billet forged aluminium, it's times by 1. It's not really what I'd say is great. This one here, this roller rocker here,
because it's thicker,
is way thicker. That's times by 2. That's followed the formula that you should always follow. So anyway, cut a long story short, when the push rod broke the adjuster, it whacked it on the side here and it bent the push rod. Now subsequently, when you have that much pressure in a cylinder, so it's broken the exhaust adjuster. So basically the exhaust valve can't open anymore. So then it's done an engine rotation. It's allowed the cylinder to fill up with oxygen and fuel, fired it, but hasn't been able to exhaust it because the exhaust is stuck. So the next revolution, the engine's come up trying to open the intake valve to get another gulp of fresh air into the cylinder. It can't physically open the valve because of the pressure behind it. This is what happened.
That's the weak spot.
Yeah. So people will go, "Oh, that's terrible. You've been a pushrod," you know. But you'd rather been a pushrod than bust all the rings off your pistons, because that's what'll happen if it pushes too hard. So you'd rather have a failure like that than
the motor must find the weakest link, and in this case, you are the weakest link.
Yeah. So look, now with these new rockers, the engine turns over way easier. It's just like boom, and I've actually had to adjust the idle because the idle's too high now. So obviously the rolling resistance by changing from bush to Torrington bearing is way less. Now, you don't need to run Torrington bearing in every engine application. It's not necessary to run it in every engine application, but in this case, it's better. So this is quite a performance engine. It needs to have performance parts in it.
Super. So this one's just about ready to go back. Problem fixed.
Yes, one of many.
Till next time.
Yes.
If you like this video, don't forget to click like and leave a comment. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe and click the notification bell. If you like the t-shirts that you see the crew wearing, there's a link in the description below where you can grab some for yourself. Thanks for watching.